Whether you're producing a big budget fantasy action movie filled with explosions and computer generated imagery, or you are filming something as simple as a television family sitcom, or you simply use this app Plotagon like I do. Making films is never easy. I mean, it is entirely possible for anyone to use Plotagon to make feature films edited together, but doing it properly is where things get tricky. If you're wanting to pursue a creative career, I believe that writing scripts and making films at a young age is a great first step. However, making good films is something you want to do, right? Maybe now when you look at your films, you can see such great quality in them. That's normal. At this young of an age, it is not outlandish to see them as such. However, years later, it becomes pretty clear that maybe it was not as good as you once thought it was. Today, I'm going to go over 10 tips on how to make a good film. If there's any specific tips that you want to know about that weren't mentioned in this video, feel free to let me know, and I'll answer to the best of my abilities. Number 1. Come up with a story. Outlining the plot is the first step to any project. Every film should have a clear idea of all the events that would take place within the beginning, middle, and end of the story. Also, be sure to go over your plot a few times to make sure there are no inconsistencies or plot holes within the timeline of events. Make sure your story can be distinguishable from other stories, meaning don't try to follow tropes that literally billions of other movies have followed. That would make the film generic and not very fun to watch. One thing to keep in mind is to give the audience a reason to care. Be sure to bring about a main character with a world on their shoulders and must struggle to complete their objective. Number 2. Set the tone. The tone of a film is how the audience is meant to feel while watching it. The tone can often be determined by the genre of a film. If you are making a comedy, you'll want to include scenes and dialogue that makes the audience laugh. If you are making a horror film, insert moments to frighten the audience and leave them not knowing what to expect next. If you're making an action movie, make the situation exciting. Keep the audience at the edge of their seat. Those are only a few examples, and the tone that should be set depends on the movie. This can mean the subject matter, the genre, or the setting. You can set the tone through visual or auditory means. What I mean is, the environment can be a clue to the tone, and the music would set the mood, whether it be jolly, desolate, cautionary, etc. There are examples of films where the tone changes, as in there's one moment where it is dark and serious, then the next moment it is bright and vibrant. Tonal change within the picture can work as long as it feels natural. Unless there's a reason to do otherwise, try to keep the tone consistent. Number 3. Foreshadowing. As you watch the same movie multiple times, you may notice how some elements reflect moments that would happen later in the picture, or provide a sort of warning of what would happen next. This is called foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is a great storytelling method because not only does it help connect two distant scenes together, it also comes as ammunition for the characters to use for their own objectives. This is also part of plot twists. Foreshadowing to a plot twist should be very subtle so the audience will not be able to anticipate the plot twist. However, there should also be enough foreshadowing so the audience can connect it to the twist itself. Otherwise, the twist comes completely out of left field, and no matter which way you look at the twist, nothing makes sense. This can be the same problem if a certain event in the climax comes around without any foreshadowing to it. Never underestimate the power of foreshadowing, but don't overestimate it either. Number 4. Raise the stakes. In an action film, which final battle sounds more fun to you? One where the protagonist is taking all the hits from the villain, yet only one blow is enough for the protagonist's victory? Or one where the protagonist and the villain both take about as much damage as each other, with the environment being a huge threat as the fight continues? I think I know my answer to that one. As the film progresses, you'll want to further raise the chances of the protagonist being defeated. That way, it would make his victory all the more satisfying. This is most crucial in the climax because this is the hero's final test, so you'd expect it to be for all the marbles. The objective must be hanging by a thread with the possibility that it would never be completed. Not every story ends with the protagonist's victory, but even if it doesn't, make it a satisfying climax to watch, and if the hero loses, it needs to serve the purpose of delivering the film's message and or provide a strong emotional connection with the character. Number 5. Adjust the pacing. Sometimes when you watch a film, you'll notice it's only an hour and a half long, yet feels like it is 2.5 hours long. A lot of this contributes to slow pacing. Or perhaps it's the other way around. The film may be 2 hours, yet feels like it's an hour and a half. You don't want the pacing in a film to be too fast or too slow, though it can be a challenge to balance the two. Major suggestions on how to remedy this pacing issue would be to condense scenes into smaller chunks if it feels like it is too long, but make sure the scene only ends after all the information required from the scene is provided. Also, make sure the pacing is consistent. Each scene should flow naturally from one after the other. All the scenes combined should feel like the film lasts for its listed runtime. If the audience wants to sleep or feel like they're missing out on something important by the time the scene is done, you're doing it wrong. Test screening is an important process in making the movie. If the pacing feels uneven, make it even again. Number 6. Everything happens for a reason. This tip should be self-explanatory, but here's some more details. Everything that occurs in a film is deliberate. There should be a reason for its existence. It can be for character development, advancing the story, or revealing history about the setting. This also ties into the tip about the pacing. If an element is making the pacing too slow, remove it or condense it. If a scene exists only for the purpose of extending the runtime or has no relation to the narrative or characters, then you seriously need to rethink your life choices. The film industry has no place for scenes that only fill up the runtime, hence the reason they are often dubbed filler. Number 7. Show, don't tell. The introduction to the protagonist is one of the most important elements of the exposition. This character's action should be enough to let you know what he's like. You shouldn't have to resort to narration in order to let the audience know who they are meant to get attached to. Narration as a whole should be used sparingly, if at all. Movies are not audiobooks, nor should they be treated as such. If the audience has everything in a film spelled out for them, it's not as fun. Film is a visual style of storytelling. Hand gestures, facial expressions, and even the character's actions should be the main fashion in which the story is told in the film. It is okay to make dialogue-heavy scenes, or even use dialogue to begin with, but try not to make the film centered on dialogue or narration. Number 8. Avoid repetition. Let's say you're watching a movie and a certain joke appears that makes you laugh. Okay, that's nice. But then the joke appears again. Alright, cool. Then a third time, and a fourth, and a fifth. And every time it happens, it gets less and less funny. In a comedy, there's this rule of threes, where a joke wears itself thin when it is repeated more than 3 times. The same can apply for catchphrases or elements that apply to a specific character. It would not do to dwell on such elements for too long, otherwise it tends to get very annoying. If the protagonist has to conquer a certain fear, try to utilize that fear in moderation. Same with his catchphrase if he has one, or any running jokes. If a joke is not funny the first time, don't bother repeating it. Number 9. Take it easy with the side plots. Some films that have side plots that center on some of the supporting cast. This could be a romantic relationship, or training in a certain fighting art, or conflicting obstacles that a character may be going through. If you're going to insert side plots into your film, make sure it amounts to something with the main storyline too. All the side plots should be connected with the main story in some fashion. Don't go centering a portion of the film on a character that does not interact with any of the main cast, or have no significance in their interactions to make a true impression on the audience in the long run. And don't insert too many subplots either. Otherwise, the film will become a cluttered mess and look a lot more complex than it actually is. That is not how you want your audience to see the film. If a film seems complex, that should be because it is complex, not because there are a bunch of other storylines that don't mesh with the storyline that audiences paid less than 10% of their weekly paycheck to see. Number 10. Ensure that you can have fun making the film. No film in the world is truly perfect. Even the greatest films of all time have one small flaw or other that is either overlooked or not exactly known about. But if you're hoping to make an absolutely perfect film that has absolutely no flaws whatsoever, whether it be noteworthy or not, that's like hoping to invent a way to safely land a space shuttle on the sun. You shouldn't care about whether or not your film will be absolutely perfect. While you should try to avoid as many flaws in your work as possible, the main thing is to have fun while making the film, and make it an experience that your audience would find fun too. That's why feedback from your audience is important. You can keep the feedback in mind for when you create your next project, and hopefully be able to clean up even more flaws. Just remember, one of the most important aspects of making a film is to have fun. That's all for this video. Man, that was a chore. If there are any tips that weren't mentioned in this video that you would like to share, let me know in the comments. You can also comment asking about what other advice outside the video I could provide regarding a certain film element. I will try to answer to the best of my abilities. Thanks for watching.